morning and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another Under the Microscope show for you this morning where we're going to be looking at the playoff semi-final in League One between Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday. I'm your host, Alfie Burns. Joining me are my two colleagues, Toby and Adam. Toby, how are you this morning?
Yeah, good, thanks. Really intriguing start to the playoffs last night, wasn't it, in League One with Wycombe's win over MK Dons. So that's really set that one up nicely for the second leg. And obviously it's another huge match tonight with Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday, two really big names, two teams who should really be playing at a higher level than this. So just sets this one up to be an absolutely brilliant encounter as well with so much at stake.
And how about you? How are you, Adam?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. I think this one, this upcoming tie, I think is going to be an even better one than yesterday, just with the amount of pressure really on the two sides with how big they are and the expectations for them to get back to the championship. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter this morning. So any Sunderland or Sheffield Wednesday fans joining us, get your score predictions in the comments and we'll get them up on the show. Or just, in fact, how you feeling about the game? The nerves kicking in yet, or are you quite relaxed about it? And anybody that wants to comment on last night's game and their thoughts on the League One playoffs, please do. But between them, we'll get straight into it. We'll start with tonight's home side then in Sunderland. They finished 5th in the League One table, played 46, won 24, drew 12, lost 10, scored 79 goals, conceded 53, leaving them with 84 points. Good run since Alex Neil took over in mid-February as well. Just one defeat for the Black Cats under his watch. Toby, how are you feeling about Sunderland heading into the playoffs then?
Yeah, I think they're in quite a strong position, aren't they? I mean, as you say, it's been a really good run for them under Alex Neil, which certainly for me seems to have vindicated the decision they made to change manager. I think there was a few eyebrows raised, really, wasn't there, given the position they were in when they took the decision to sack Lee Johnson when they were still well inside the playoffs and potentially not out of reach of the automatic promotion places. But I think you sort of look at the run they were on at that time. Obviously, it came off the back of that 6-0 humiliation at Bolton, Johnson's departure. And it seemed like, maybe the sort of the streakiness that has really haunted sort of Sunderland under Johnson was starting to threaten them again. So in that sense, the change does seem to have paid off, really, with the run that they're now on under Alex Neil. There's been some excellent wins under him, some really strong performances. I think we've seen with a number of late goals that they've scored under Neil, that sort of fighting ability, that quality to really not give in and take a game all the way to the end and still at that point be able to come up with a crucial moment that has picked up some big results for them. So that's massive in terms of the confidence they'll take into this one and the momentum they have as well. Maybe, that you look at the final day of the season, just the 1-0 win at Morecambe, that was obviously not as convincing as the 5-0 they had at the Stadium of Light sort of earlier in the season. But nevertheless, that was all about getting the job done. They made sure they did that. So again, the momentum's there, and I think they're in a really quite a good position coming into this one now.
And what about you, Adam? What are your thoughts on Sunderland heading into this playoff campaign?
It's going to be a very strange one, obviously, for the Black Cats fans. Obviously, they've had some very bad memories of the playoffs in recent years. So they know just as much as anyone that the form kind of goes out the window. It's a bit of a lottery, really, the playoffs. I think they've been fantastic under Alex Neil. I think they've suffered kind of a little bit of a wobble against Rotherham. I think they weren't exactly at their best that night, and I think that's a warning to them, really, to kind of think that they're not really invincible, really, under Alex Neil, because obviously they're not. The first half performance, I think, wasn't absolutely fantastic, and I think throughout the whole game, really, against Millers, wasn't absolutely fantastic. But they struck late again, and that could kind of work in their favour. They seem to have a real habit, really, under Alex Neil of kind of scoring late goals, and that will play, I think, on Sheffield Wednesday's mind. So I think that could be a little bit of an advantage for them, kind of going into this one. Obviously, this first leg. Perhaps Sheffield Wednesday have the kind of advantage with the second leg kind of at home, but this tonight gives Sunderland a real chance really of pushing ahead and kind of making themselves kind of uncatchable really. So they should go into this tie with a lot of confidence. Obviously Alex Neil has experience of winning promotion through the playoffs before, so there's a lot to be kind of optimistic about, and there's kind of a lot of pressure on both sides really, not just Sunderland. So they should approach this one with a lot of optimism.
Yeah, these are two really evenly matched sides in League One. I'll just run you through Sheffield Wednesday's record this season. Of course, played 46, won 24, drawn 13, lost 9. They've scored one less goal than Sunderland, 78, but they've conceded less as well with 50. They've collected 85 points, which left them fourth, just ahead of Sunderland in the table. It really felt that Darren Moore's side got to grips with League One during the second half of the season, a lot like Sunderland, didn't it, Toby?
Yeah, very much so. You sort of look at the run that they've been on going into the playoffs. It is really this sort of second half of the season form that does feel like it's sort of secured them that top 6 spot, and obviously that's really how you want to be going into the playoffs. I think rather than one of those sides that might maybe has that strong start to the season, but then stumbles away in that situation. It can be really hard to sort of get yourself up for these games again. But the way that Sheffield Wednesday have done it, like Sunderland, they've come strong at the end. So again, they're in the sort of form that you'd want to be in going into these playoffs. And I mean, I think sort of that I sort of looked at the business they did all the way back in the summer with the players that they brought in. And the contracts that they were able to secure. And I think it really was sort of looking at what they've done there, it felt like top 6 was a minimum for them. And, the way that they were during the first half of the season, that really wasn't something that I was convinced they were going to do. But as we say, they've sort of really turned it around to make this playoff place, which I think they know as well will have been sort of the minimum for them, given the quality that they've got in the squad. So I think psychologically, the fact that they were able to pull that off and make sure they did sort of meet at least that minimum target will probably give them something of a lift over the past few months. So yeah, as we say, Sunderland are in a strong position here, but you can't really deny that it isn't a similar situation for Wednesday as well.
And what about you, Adam? Quick word on Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the last summer and, the off-field turmoil, and obviously they had to have their embargo lifted as well. I think it actually didn't kind of lift until the start of July. So they had a very short window in which to kind of get players in. And, that's why it was never really going to be an easy start to the season anyway, not the first half of the season. So that's why kind of Darren Moore had earned the time really to turn things around. And I'm very glad of him that he has. And as I said, first half of the season was never going to be easy. But they've got a squad really now because of that summer window and because of additions since that's kind of packed full of quality. Not just League One quality, either Championship quality. So they definitely have a very strong squad going into this one. Obviously, as I said, there's going to be high expectations on both teams. So, it doesn't exactly provide them with a psychological advantage or disadvantage, really. Their defence has been reasonably half decent when they've had the options available. So that will give them a little bit of confidence. And obviously up front, you've got plenty of forward options, and obviously in midfield as well, you've got goal scorers like Barry Bannon, who's been a real game changer, really. I'm not sure if he's going to start tonight. Obviously, we'll get onto that a little bit later, but he's a real game changer, and that's one of the reasons why he could be a real kind of difference maker in terms of deciding the kind of this tie and deciding who wins this semi-final. So I'm eager to see if he's involved as well. But I think Sheffield Wednesday also, as Toby said, they're in a very strong position. So this is what kind of makes this tie such a closely fought one, I think.
Just looking at the head-to-heads, before we came on air between Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday this season, they make for quite bizarre reading, really. Sunderland at the Stadium of Light when Sheffield Wednesday visited were 5-0 winners in late December, but in the reverse fixture in early November, it was a 3-0 win for Sheffield Wednesday. Two really convincing home performances and home victories. Adam, surely we can't expect two such heavy scorelines in favour of the home side in the playoffs.
Oh, I hope so, because that'll make it very exciting if it's a 5-0 and a 3-0, especially the second leg. But yeah, I mean I think the 5-0 scoreline actually at the Stadium of Light was slightly harsh on Sheffield Wednesday. You look at the situation they had at the time. I mean, the centre back situation was an absolute farce, really. They had one centre back starting, I think, in Che Dunkley, and then I think they went behind, and then he had to come off as well. So obviously for another centre back in Brennan, but yeah, it kind of fell apart after that, really. So I think they looked like a team on that night that only had one centre back available for them. So I'm not sure if you can judge kind of too much from that. I think that their defence that night was absolutely woeful, but they had a real excuse really for that. That takes nothing away from Sunderland because they were fantastic that night. They were very clinical. I think in terms of the tie at Hillsborough, the 3-0 loss, I think that was quite I would say kind of a little bit of a flattering scoreline, I think, for Sheffield Wednesday. I think, obviously Sunderland has quite a few chances to get themselves back in it. Obviously, they have only themselves to blame that they didn't take those chances. But, perhaps the 3-0 scoreline wasn't really representative of the whole game. And, this is the reason why I think you can't take too much, I think, from these head-to-heads. Although I do hope that these games are similarly exciting because, if that's the case, then, we're on for another kind of exciting two legs.
We've seen how crucial home advantage was in the regular season. Toby, how crucial do you think it is in the playoffs, particularly for Sheffield Wednesday having the second leg at Hillsborough on Monday?
Yeah, it is massive, isn't it? I mean, just looking at the League One table now, if you base this purely on home form, then it is these two sides who would have topped the division. No one in League One has been stronger at home than these two sides over the course of the campaign. So that sort of shows you just how important that could be. I mean, both these sides are going to be aware of the others' form at home. And that will certainly put the pressure on. But I think it does maybe, or as you say, give the slight advantage to Wednesday in terms of the fact that they are playing at home in the second leg, because they know that if something doesn't perhaps go perfectly for them tonight, then they still have that sort of home form as a little bit of an insurance policy there. Whereas by contrast, it probably puts the pressure on Sunderland in terms of, given they know, as I was saying, how good Wednesday are at home. It's really massive important for the Black Cats to go out and get a positive result tonight. So could that sort of really force them to come on a bit more than they otherwise would and leave gaps in behind for Wednesday to exploit? I mean, it is a potential possibility that we could see happen tonight. But I think as well, both legs already look as though they're going to be sold out, don't they? Which I guess should be no surprise really when you consider the fan bases that these two sides have, and that as well is going to really add something in terms of the atmosphere at both legs, and that as well is just going to really add to the spectacle that I think we're going to see over tonight and Monday night. In
terms of the team news, then, we were all sat eagerly anticipating the press conferences yesterday on Football League World. Sunderland are going to make a late call on Nathan Broadhead ahead of the game, whilst Darren Moore's press conference came before Wednesday had trained, so he was very, very coy on whether Barry Bannon was going to shake off his hamstring issue to make himself fit. Adam, was there a sense of mind games in the two press conferences yesterday?
100%, I think it is. I really do have a feeling that Barry Bannon will start tomorrow. I think Broadhead, I think, will probably start as well. Obviously, it's a slightly more difficult situation for Sunderland because of the lack of forward options they have. Obviously, with Jermaine Defoe retiring, that was quite a blow for them, really. So, in terms of Broadhead, kind of the Black Cats might not want to risk him. And as we've seen before, he can make a real difference off the bench. So I think that could be, something that kind of Alex Neil kind of thinks about, so that could give him that option, and they start with a one up top. But it remains to be seen whether that's the case. They've got plenty of players in there who can also contribute kind of going forward anyway from midfield, so they shouldn't be too worried if Broadhead doesn't start. But obviously it might mean kind of a switch in formation and that kind of thing. Obviously Barry Bannon's been absolutely massive for Sheffield Wednesday this season. Obviously, it was great that he stayed with them really and remained loyal to the cause. Obviously, 9 goals and 12 assists in the league this season. Now, they've barely been without him really. I think he's made 45 league appearances this season, which is an exceptional record really. It just goes to show how crucial he would be really if you took him out of that starting lineup. that could kind of really affect the dynamic really of Sheffield Wednesday's team. I know that George Byers can kind of contribute going forward, and obviously Josh Windass as well, who can perhaps kind of drop into midfield, perhaps as a more attacking option. But I think having a real leader in there in Barry Bannon, I think the fact that he's captain as well adds an extra kind of dimension to this decision in terms of whether he starts or not, because he's a real leader both on and off the field. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see the lineups. But I have a feeling that I definitely have a feeling that Barry Bannon will start. I think with Broadhead, there's probably less of a. It's probably slightly less likely, but there's still an opportunity, kind of a real chance that he'll start, because I'm not sure that Alex Neil will want to really kind of change things up too much. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, you've touched on it earlier in the show, Toby. Firstly, the size of these two clubs and just how many people are going to be attending the legs at the Stadium of Light and Hillsborough. From a neutrals point of view, and us three are sitting here as neutrals now, you really want to see the best 11s on show. So fingers crossed that Broadhead and Bannon can both be involved tonight.
Yeah, definitely. As we say, with these attendances and with the size of these clubs, it is all set up to be sort of a spectacular couple of legs here. With what's at stake and the size of these two clubs, as I sort of said earlier, you feel that both should be playing at a higher level than this, but it's already certain that at least one of them won't be next season. But you need fixtures like this to sort of really bring in the sort of interest at this level. This can really be a great advertisement for football at League One, and the best way of doing that is having these top players out on the pitch, and Bannon and Broadhead, respectively, certainly fit that bill for both teams. I think Nathan Broadhead's really stepped up brilliantly at times, hasn't he? When Ross Stewart perhaps hasn't been at top form earlier in the season, or he's been out for injury, he's really sort of taken the responsibility on in terms of goals for Sunderland. As for Barry Bannon at Wednesday, I mean, he's just an incredible talent at this level. Some of the goals and the assists he's produced have been absolutely incredible this season. So they are two players who easily get into these sides' best starting lineups, and as I say, given the magnitude of this game and the importance of it, that means you really want to see these sorts of players involved, and hopefully there will be. I mean, again, with the importance of this, you feel that at some point over the course of the ties, Neil and Moore are both going to have to turn to these players. So you would definitely expect them to have a say.
Just going to throw a couple of stats around now. Sunderland have scored 27 goals from set-piece situations this season. Only the top two of Wigan and Rotherham have scored more. We saw last night with Wickham's opening goal just how crucial set-pieces can be in these tight playoff games, Adam.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, last night just proved really that you don't really get extra kind of brownie points for the quality of the goals. All it takes really is a little kind of flick off Tafazoli or just like a half decent header from Sam Vokes. It doesn't take a huge amount. Sometimes it's the fine margins and those moments that can make all the difference really. So you make a good point. It doesn't have to be the most glorious goals, but as long as they're getting themselves over the line, then it doesn't really matter. I think in terms of some of the danger men for Sunderland, I think you've got to keep an eye on Bailey Wright. Obviously, he's got himself a couple of goals this season. I think he got himself a goal at Wigan as well, in a really big game as well, kind of perhaps really defining really for Neil's kind of tenure so far. So, he's popped up in big moments, and he'll do that at the back, and I'm sure that he'll get in amongst the goals as well, perhaps in the next couple of games. So I'm excited to see kind of the threat that he has as well. Obviously, we've got the selection dilemma with obviously Broadhead, who's a big presence in there. Obviously, Ross Stewart as well, who were two really big kind of presences in there. I don't think their centre backs have really scored the most goals this season, but obviously they've got that height in there with the centre back partnership, and that could be that could play a big part. And obviously they've got players as well that can take very good set pieces. Obviously McGeady, obviously from the penalty spot and free kicks, and there was one particular moment actually earlier in the season. I think it was against Ipswich, and Alex Pritchard put in a wonderful ball really, and it led to I think it was O'Neill's goal, and I think it was Walton's mistake that kind of overshadowed it. But I think that kind of just sums up really the quality that Sunderland have from set pieces, and I think that might alter kind of Sheffield Wednesday's tactical plans in a way. I think they might have three big centre backs perhaps tonight. Because they do need to deal with kind of that aerial threat that's in there, and obviously with set pieces as well. That's going to be huge if they've got three capable central defenders. So I think that will kind of come into it really, and I think that's where it will be key really, whether the game will be won or lost tonight in that kind of Sunderland's kind of attacking area. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, as for Sheffield Wednesday, slightly different threat. They've had 20 different goal scorers this season, which I think I'm right in saying is the most in League One. So Darren Moore's got goals from all over the pitch, from all manner of individuals. Toby, that's really important going into a game like this where anybody can be a hero.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive, and it's a bit of a contrast that really, isn't it? You sort of look at Sheffield Wednesday's scorers. Obviously, Lee Gregory's leading the tally for them so far this season with 16. He's the only player past double figures, and it's a bit of a difference from say Sunderland, where you've got Ross Stewart, who has really stood out for them with sort of 24 goals. He's been sort of that one man that they have quite often turned to, as I say, put the ball in the back of the net when they need to. Whereas Sheffield Wednesday perhaps haven't had that reliance quite so much on one person, and certainly when you haven't got that goal scorer who is quite as prolific as a Ross Stewart, you really need that sort of ethos where anyone at some point or another will step up and will make that sort of contribution to ensure that when your Lee Gregory isn't fit or available, you have still got other players that can sort of stick the ball in the back of the net. And I think we never know what's going to happen in these games, and if you don't want something like this to happen, but if Sunderland lose Ross Stewart for some reason or another, it puts a bit more pressure on them in terms of finding a goal scorer when they maybe don't have these sorts of players who maybe share the goals about as much as Sheffield Wednesday do. If they were to lose, say a Lee Gregory, you might argue, given those numbers that you've thrown out, that they could cope better with the loss of a top scorer. So that is something that could arguably sort of tip things in the balance in favour of Wednesday over the course of the two legs.
You're going to be about 80,000 people combined going to these two games, and plenty of watchful eyes on the television as well. It's a massive game for a League One playoff semi-final. We'll get into some predictions next then. I'll come to you both individually here, but we'll have a first leg prediction for the game at Sunderland tonight, and then an overall prediction. I know it's a long way away Monday night, but Toby, prediction tonight and who you're fancying to go through to Wembley?
In terms of tonight, I really tough to call this one. I get the feeling that this one is going to be a really cagey affair. The fact that it's the first leg as well. Both teams maybe not wanting to give too much away when, as you say, there is still so much of the tie left to be played. So I think this one for tonight, I'll go for 1-1. But I think then there's sort of home advantage for Sheffield Wednesday in the second leg when it opens up a bit more, could maybe play into their hands. So I'll say 1-1 tonight, but Sheffield Wednesday to go through. Let's go 3-2 on aggregate. And
how about you, Adam?
Yeah, I've gone with the same scoreline tonight. I think it's going to be a 1-1. I think Sheffield Wednesday might actually take the lead kind of early in the second half. I think a Lee Gregory or someone like that's going to pop up and put them in front. But I think, with Sunderland's real team spirit and that kind of never say die attitude, I think they might get an equaliser kind of at the end. I think maybe a Nathan Broadhead might get an equaliser. So, I'm going to go with a 1-1 on the night. I think in terms of the overall tie, this is a really tough one to call. Because obviously, Sheffield Wednesday have had some nightmares really at home before in the second leg of semi-finals, of playoff semi-finals. Anyway, obviously you think back to 2017 against Huddersfield, and I think they might even suffer the same fate. I think this might go down to a penalty shootout at Hillsborough. I really do. I think maybe Sunderland to come out on top with that one. Obviously with the pressure perhaps from the home crowd and loads of eyes really on the Sheffield Wednesday players. If it does go to a penalty shootout in the second leg, then I think that Sunderland may just come out on top on this one. So I'm going to go with this one's going to go right down to the wire, and I'm going to go with a penalty shootout win in the second leg for Sunderland.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a great tie, and it's been good to hear from both of you there. I think some really good analysis, and you've teed the game up perfectly. It's going to be a great tie, and you've done it justice there. Thanks to anybody that's joined us on Football League World TV this week. We'll be back next week analysing, the end of the Championship season, the League Two season, the League One playoffs, and what's to come beyond that. So plenty to look forward to. So take care, have a good weekend, and we'll see you again soon.